This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Luke Sylvia and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic! What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is June 13th, 2024. Jonathan Osborne here. Tonight, I am joined by Kevin Tucker. Kevin, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good. Right now, as we speak, I'm actually watching the United States and Brazil game. Some of you might have actually attended this game. It's in Orlando, obviously. 92nd minute now, 1-1, down to the wire. For those of you like myself that are big fans of a lot of other sports other than basketball, this is a great time of year. You got all these warm-up games for the Euros, these warm-up games for Copa America, and then those tournaments kick off here shortly. And then you got some of the Olympics. I mean, it's a great time of year. Obviously, basketball-wise, I'm still missing the Magic, but at least there's some other things to tide me over.
I was talking to a friend of mine today and saying, like, as a kid, this was always the time of summer that I absolutely dreaded when it comes to sports. Basketball ends, NHL ends. Obviously, there's no football. In non-Olympic summers, this is just like baseball territory. Like that, right. I wouldn't even turn on Sports Center for like a month or two this time of year because the entire Sports Center top 10 would be, catches, in the outfield and sick pitches and home runs. And although, I do enjoy, baseball, it's just not the same when it's the only thing that's going on. But I've always enjoyed the Olympics, like watching water polo, like watching, Portugal and whoever, going at it in water polo and all, like a lot of the sports in the Olympics that I would typically never otherwise watch. I just enjoy watching the Olympics. It's always fun.
It's like in the Winter Olympics, curling. Like I don't watch curling, right. The other, 3 9/10 of a year. It's just that one, couple weeks. I'm a huge curling fan during the Winter Olympics, that kind of stuff. But yeah, Olympics are fun. I always love, obviously, the tournaments in soccer. So yeah, lots of things to keep us busy this summer.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about the Olympic basketball tournament as it pertains to the Orlando Magic. We've been talking for the last several episodes about how, yes, we are going to talk about draft prospects. We're sort of just waiting for our guests' schedules to open up and get a little bit closer to the draft. So this episode, a little bit later on, we're joined by Keandre from Hoop Intellect, which for my money is the best guy there is, especially on YouTube when it comes to draft prospects and really breaking down and making it palatable. So even if you don't watch a ton of college basketball, you have at least a decent opinion on who these guys are, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. So stay tuned for that conversation a little bit later. Again, just a really big thank you to Keandre. We do have some Magic news to talk about, Kevin. Earlier today, the Orlando Magic announced that they have their preseason schedule. So as we're recording this, we are just under 4 months away from the official return of Magic basketball. So the preseason schedule starts October 7th, which is a Monday, at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, if you've been following the Magic or the NBA for any amount of time, you are not oblivious to the fact that usually it's pretty difficult to watch at least the first couple of preseason games. Now, I read through the Magic's press release. I didn't see them mention anything about, any Bally broadcasts or what is it going to be, like FanDuel, Florida Sports, whatever. I guess FanDuel has purchased the naming rights to the whole Bally network, so I guess it'll be FanDuel Sports Florida or something to that effect.
But guess, who knows?
Yeah, we just don't know what the broadcast schedule is going to look like for these preseason games. But if history tells us anything, usually at least the first couple of games are not televised, at least not in Central Florida, and the last couple are sort of those warm-ups for the Bally broadcast team. But October 7th, which is a Monday, 1:30 Eastern Time. Then Wednesday, October 9th at San Antonio. That's going to be 8 p.m. Eastern. October 11th at home versus the Pelicans again. And then, so you have 3 games in 5 nights, which I know, Kevin, you want to talk about. And then a week off, and then you finish the preseason October 18th versus the Philadelphia 76ers. So 4 preseason games, and, we're playing New Orleans again, of course.
Yeah, again. I don't know. Can we mix it up a little bit? Can we try somebody new? It's just New Orleans. again, which is annoying. But yeah, okay, so when this first came out, I saw 1:30. I was like, surely they got the date wrong. It must be October 6th, which is a Sunday, right? Like at 1:30 p.m., 12:30 local time in New Orleans. That makes sense. But no, it's a 1:30 on a Monday afternoon in October, which I can't believe that. Surely it's got to be some field trip day at the Smoothie King Center for that game, which is weird. And then you got the San Antonio game. But yeah, like you said, 3 games in 5 days, and then you get 7 days off before you play your preseason finale. I don't know. It's a weird one. But regardless, I'm happy to have some news, some Magic news. We can mark our calendars, especially that Monday, October 7th day. I've already requested off work. As soon as I saw it today, I'm taking it off for that 1:30 game. It's weird, but I'll take it.
I just entered the Kevin Tucker part of my brain. I went to look to see what's going on at Smoothie King Center that day or maybe that night as to why that game might be going on. And there's nothing going on that night at Smoothie King Center. So
of course not.
Doesn't really make a ton of sense. But yeah, like when this dropped today, I was like, oh my gosh, we're only 4 months. Like this feels like the season just ended. We've only got 4 more months. But then I was like, 4 months is a long time. Like
a long time.
Valentine's, like we were, basically celebrating Paolo Banchero being an all-star 4 months ago, which feels like forever ago. So we still have quite a bit of time until the Orlando Magic preseason. But so then, you can, the good thing about the preseason schedule coming out is that you can, for sure, the season is going to start like that week of October 21st. So we know probably between like the 21st and the 25th will be the Magic's first game of the season, somewhere in that window. And that's helpful for us because it allows us to plan for that time of year. So very much looking forward to that. Speaking of schedules, wanted to go through and just review the offseason schedule. We've talked about these all these different events at sort of different times, but we thought it could be helpful to go through really the entire offseason schedule and like the important dates for the Orlando Magic, just so that you can all mark it down on your calendar and be aware and look forward to these dates. So first of all, the next day that really matters to the Magic at all is going to be the day after the NBA Finals. So right now, the Mavericks and the Celtics are playing in Game 3. The Celtics, go up 3-0. We might be looking in the next couple of days it being the day after the finals. But whenever that is when each NBA team can begin negotiating with upcoming free agents who finish the season on their roster. So we're talking about guys that might be eligible for extensions with the Magic, guys that are going to be unrestricted free agents who finish the season with the Magic. Kevin's going to talk a bit more about the Magic specific contract deadlines in just a second here. June 26th and 27th now is going to be the NBA draft. Remember, they're breaking up the rounds into separate days. And Kevin was looking at the TV schedule. Do you want to talk about that?
By the way, we looked at this beforehand. I was like, what are they going to do with this? This is subject to change. But right now on ESPN's website, when you look at their TV broadcast schedule, they have round 1 beginning on that Wednesday at 8 p.m. The next thing on the broadcast schedule is SportsCenter with Scott Van Pelt at 11 p.m., which means as of right now, they're going to stretch the first round of the NBA draft into 3 hours. 3 hours for 30 picks. Let that sink in. And then they're doing the same thing the next day. Second round starts at 4 p.m. The next thing is the NHL awards, which start at 7 p.m. 3 hours for the second round. 6 hours for 2 rounds of the NBA draft. That is disgusting. The amount of ads and just nonsense is going to be gross.
So I just broke it down. So that's 180 minutes, right, of the draft, 30 picks. You only get, 5 minutes to make your pick? That's allotting 6 minutes per pick. And we know that not every team uses the full 5 minutes.
Right.
Like some teams are going to know that this is their guy immediately after the pick before them is made, and they're just going to submit that. So who knows? We might at some point have like 10 minutes between of them just like filling airtime.
Yep.
Like at the end of that, or who knows? But
and in years past, the second round was 2 minutes each, and so are they going to make the second round 5 minutes each just to fill the whole 3 hours? I don't know. It's ludicrous, but count on ESPN to do something ludicrous because that's what they do.
And I'm an NBA fan, like way more than I am an NFL fan, right? But there's just something about the NFL draft that is just so much more entertaining. Yeah. Just from a TV perspective, compared to the NBA draft. I don't know what it is about that, but that much time to go through 30 NBA picks just seems a little bit crazy. I think it makes more sense in the NFL because there's just so many more players.
Right.
Like it's such a bigger pool that,
Right.
but obviously there's more picks and there's more rounds and everything like that.
To quote a wise man, one of our patrons, ESPN really sucks.
Hey, fair enough. That's a great point. Then June 30th is when every NBA team can start negotiating with all other upcoming free agents. And that's beginning at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Kevin, I don't know about you. I know Luke and I have talked about this on the show before. I legitimately miss free agency starting at midnight, July 1st.
Yep. Yeah.
Like I would take the day off, the next day off from work, and I would stay up until 3, 4 in the morning, just refreshing Twitter. Like my brother-in-law would come over, we would hang out, we would get food, and we would just hang out and watch free agency unfold. I really miss that. I understand why they moved it to 6 o'clock because it's just a lot more practical.
Right.
But there was something special about the midnight start to free agency.
It was like the release of a video game back in the day.
It was.
You know? It very much on that same level, which was a lot of fun. But yes, old man Kevin is very grateful that is not the case anymore, especially this version of Kevin right now. I need a lot of sleep these days.
I was going to say, when you get that new valve, you're going to feel differently.
That is 100% true. You're not wrong about that. Right now, I have to sleep a lot. And so I'm glad I don't have to stay up till midnight that night. But yeah, I definitely miss those days. Those were a lot of fun when I was younger.
Going to GameStop and just being there with like 40 other nerds waiting for, whatever game was going to be coming out. And then like for me, there was always like the PlayStation line and the Xbox line. Mm-hmm. PlayStation line wasn't really that long back in the day, but the pendulum is now swinging, the other way. I know as you can attest to, but those were the good old days.
Yeah, I'll take my Xbox. I'm good.
Yeah, whatever. Okay, Kevin, you have the list of like the Magic specific contract deadlines. Do you want to go through that for us?
Sure, yeah. So when we're talking about dates, there's a couple dates in here that matter, but the one that Magic fans really, really need to circle, like this is the biggest one, the deadline date of June 29th. Okay, Jonathan just talked about June 30th with, players that are not on your team, being able to, start recruiting them. June 29th is a huge day for the Magic. There are 7 players that their deadline is that day. Let me go through them. You got qualifying offers for 2024-25 qualifying offer for Chuma, for Trevelyan Queen, for Kevon Harris, and for Admiral Schofield. Obviously, those last 3 are two-way qualifying offers, but Chuma as well, that's his real qualifying offer. And then you have on that same day another qualifying offer that is for Franz for his 25-26 qualifying offer. So those, the Franz one, obviously, that's going to happen. When it comes to Mo and Joe, they also have a deadline that day, but that is their club option for this coming season. Mo Wagner, Joe Ingles, both on a team option. A lot of question marks with Joe Ingles. That will be answered by June 29th as far as picking up that team option. And even Mo Wagner, I think most people assume he's going to stay, especially with the low salary of $8 million. But again, that deadline is that day. Other dates to consider after June 29th. Caleb Houston's 24-25 salary gets guaranteed on June 30th, so the very next day. A couple of extension eligibility deadlines. Jonathan Isaac on July 6th, Caleb Houston on July 10th, and then Wendell's isn't until October 10th. So that's the last one, basically before the regular season starts. But yeah, that big day, June 29th, a lot of qualifying offers, club options. That's the day that I think Magic fans should keep an eye out for.
Yeah, I know the Magic have to extend the qualifying offer in order to like go to restricted free agency, whether that be with Chuma or with Franz. I don't know if it's different, like if they're just outright extending Franz, like whether or not they have to, give him the qualifying offer. So that's what we're going to be waiting to see, the day after the NBA draft. That's when teams are able to start negotiating with guys on their team. And that's when we would expect to start hearing news on Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, really a lot of these other guys, whether or not they're going to pick up their club options. The guys that you mentioned that are also eligible for extensions outside of the guys on their rookie contracts, like I guess Caleb is on his rookie contract, but I wouldn't expect him to be extended at this point.
Right. Jonathan
Isaac, Wendell Carter Jr., I wouldn't expect those guys to be extended at this point. But we'll just have to wait and see and see how the offseason plays out. But to think that we're really just 3 weeks roughly at the most away from like a lot of these decisions being made and getting news on that is super exciting. So can't wait for that. Now, moving a little bit further into the summer, July 6th is the day that each NBA team may begin signing free agents to contract. So the day after the finals, you can start negotiating those deals. June 30th, you can start negotiating the deals with all of the free agents. And then the moratorium basically lifts July 6th. That's when you can start signing everyone to those deals, or the free agents to those deals. And then we get into the early, Olympic friendlies and that kind of stuff, the warm-ups, July 15th. And we're just talking really about the games that are important to the Magic. So we're not going to talk a ton about Team USA because Paolo Banchero is not playing for Team USA this summer. We're really just looking at Joe Ingles playing for Australia and then Mo and Franz Wagner playing for Germany. So July 15th in the USA basketball showcase in Abu Dhabi, Australia will play USA. That'll be at noon Eastern time on Fox Sports 1. July 22nd, during the USA basketball showcase in London, Germany will play Team USA. That's going to be at 3 p.m. Eastern on Fox. And then starting July 26th through August 9th is going to be the Paris 2024 Olympic basketball tournament, which obviously the USA, Germany, and I keep forgetting that Paolo's not playing for USA, but Germany and Australia will be playing in that tournament. So just got another couple of weeks here, and then we're gonna start having some Magic specific things to talk about. So that'll help us get through part of the summer there. Kev, would be pretty exciting. All right, before we get to our conversation with Keandre from Hoop Intellect, I want to take just a moment to quickly talk a little bit about our Patreon. If you're newer to the show, or for some, I don't know, some impossible possibility that you haven't heard us talk about the Patreon if you've been listening to the show for any amount of time. Maybe you just usually skip through this part. But Patreon, those are the folks that financially support the show and help us do everything that we're doing. It has been a massive off season for us already in terms of acquisition and turnover and just different things that the show is going through. We're doing our best to keep, improving the show as best as we can going into this next season and sort of going into like a new chapter of the show. And the support from our Patreon is really what allows us to do a lot of that. So whenever we have brand new patrons, we make sure to thank them and give them a special shout out on the show. And we shout out our Hall of Fame and Elite Tier patrons each and every episode. So I'm going to go ahead and start by shouting out the Court Cousins, Drew Gooden, Armin, Carson Tulo, Ellis, Jonathan Borges, Normal, Magic Player History, Gabe Gaines, Wiffle, Michael Martin, Jamel Miller, Michael Salapong, Donkey Punch Dave, Paolo and Franz's Warmth, which I was listening to Let's Talk Magic the other day, and Paolo and Franz's Warmth is also one of their patrons.
Wow.
So not only does he haunt our show, but because of something that I said, now the Let's Talk Magic guys, who used to be Orlando Magic UK, now they also have to say that on their podcast. So I just really, really apologize for that. Pierre A., Dylan Holden, Mr. Mikey, Danimo, Bobby Skinner, Goody93, Teddy Sylvia, Dalek Lopez, Fuchsia, Bill Fulton, Edmund Lagone, Jose Esquilin, Caleb Pete, Cannibalism, Time Mr. TV, ESPN Really Sucks, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, Gear 95, Shred, Junior Bruce, Half Rican, Shahin 177, Bobby the Don, Himlo Ben Himro, R Improv 221, Rapistron, Magic Kid 714, Mysterious Mosley, Irish Magic Mike, Austin Lampy, Random Hustle, Only Franz, Maria, Keith Wallace, Fritz, Bruv Sal, Casey Green, Santi Leon, Kane Eckler, The Distract, Ahmad Timsa, Chantu, Tom Gatson, Dead Air, Richard Tuttle, Jeremiah Quintero, Magic Wire, Debo 1980, Magic Matt, Michael Thompson, Mama Richmond, Next Snappa, What's Up Playoffs 2024, Dylan Fay, David Duffy, Smith Sheeks, Bueno Time, Stantino 1995, Suggs Muggs, Daniel Anderson Berry, and Mackle Canny. A big shout out and thank you to all of our patrons. If you would like to join the Patreon, again, you can find us at patreon.com/the6manshow. And now, without further ado, let's get to our conversation with Keandre from Hoop Intellect. Magic fans, it is that time of year. Each draft season, we try to bring Keandre on just to get his insight. Absolutely the best, on YouTube in terms of draft prospects and mock drafts, big boards, you name it. Keandre from Hoop Intellect. Keandre, how are you doing, man? How have you been?
Yeah, man, I'm doing good. I appreciate you guys for having me on once again. And, draft season is a busy time, but, I can't complain about anything.
What is draft night like for you, right? Like you do all this prep throughout the year. You obviously have your big board. You have your mocks. Like, are you living and like dying with each pick? Are you like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe they reached for that guy, or I can't believe this guy is falling? Like, what's a typical draft night like for you, when you're watching?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I really just try to take it all in. Just kind of, see each pick. And obviously there's some stuff like towards the top, we kind of already know who's going where. This class is going to be interesting because, there's a lot more like variables at the top, but I think I just try to like take everything in and, just kind of evaluate why they might have gone in a certain direction and then just kind of putting that together with what I would have done in the situation, and obviously doing recap videos after that and content post draft. So it's kind of just more, taking everything in and seeing the direction of certain teams and where they're going.
Yeah, Keandre, the last several years, us Magic fans have kind of been locked into the upper section of the draft, because team wasn't that great this past year. Obviously, the Magic making the playoffs, now falling all the way to 18. And we'll talk more about Magic specific stuff. Obviously, that's why we have you on here. We want to talk to the experts about what the Magic might do. But I'm curious for you, this draft class as a whole, I feel like I hear every week some of the national pundits saying this is one of the worst draft classes in blah, 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 however many years. It's not a good class. It's a weak class, all that kind of stuff. But I'm really curious, because we value your opinion. When you look at this draft class, how do you think it compares to past drafts? And is it as bad as some of these people are saying it is?
Yeah, so it's kind of a interesting question to answer because, excuse me, on one hand, I don't think it's necessarily the strongest draft. I think the types of talent towards the top aren't in the same sort of archetype as those that we're kind of accustomed to in the modern NBA. Obviously, when you've got a guy like Paolo who's 6'10" and can dribble, pass, shoot in the way that he can, that's a little bit different than, some of the guys that are available this year. And we can even go back to better playmaking talent with NBA level athleticism, Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, Cade Cunningham, guys like that. There's not really those type of players in this class. So on one hand, it isn't that type of draft where you're going to get a lot of those guys towards the top, but at the same time, I don't think it's this sort of like existential crisis of this the worst draft since 2001 or 2013 or whatever year everybody wants to throw in there, because I do think there is talent. I think there are players who are going to find a role, find a niche on a team and contribute for a very long time, and I think it's going to just leave it up to teams to find those guys that end up becoming all-stars, because if by the math, if this class was to have, less than 3 all-stars, that would be the first time that's happened in years, in NBA history. So, those guys are going to happen. People didn't think Giannis was going to be who he was. People didn't think Rudy Gobert was going to turn into 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. You've got a guy like C.J. McCollum who goes 10th in that draft. So the guys are there. It's just about more evaluating, finding them, and figuring it out. So I think in 2024, it would be hard for me to believe that the talent that exists in the basketball world, we're not going to get certain guys become a certain level in the NBA.
Keandre, as we're recording this on Wednesday, earlier, even just a few hours ago, you released your newest edition of your big board. I think it was version 6.0. You released your latest version of the mock draft, I think a few weeks back. I know we still have, a few weeks until the draft. Like, how close are you in terms of like finalizing, your big board and your mock draft this time of year? And do you think there's any room that's going to shift over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, so I think I'm pretty much there. I think a lot of it is just trying to touch back on stuff that I've seen before, because I feel like you can get a little bit of a recency bias in some ways, because if you haven't, it's hard to watch as many players as I do, or anybody who tries to follow and scout the draft in the way that I do. So you kind of try to touch on things and at least put your philosophy in the forefront in terms of like what you value in terms of players and how you think they're going to pan out, and just like in terms of like building a tier or things of that nature, figuring out how you want to label those and those types of things. So I'm pretty close to, it being finalized. There's just certain parts and pieces that, you always want to go back and make sure that you're, touching on everything.
Yeah. for those that are watching on YouTube or listening on our podcast feed, obviously we'll put the link to Keandre's work there in the description, and including that is like what Jonathan mentioned, your big board, your mock draft. Jonathan and I have both already watched both of those, at least especially the Magic section. So we know who your pick is, but I'd like for you to kind of share with our viewers who you have as of right now at number 18 for the Orlando Magic in your latest mock draft, and kind of why you think he might be a potential pick there for the Magic.
Yeah, I believe in the last mock draft I had Bub Carrington out of Pitt going to the Orlando Magic, and I think that he's definitely one of the primary options that could be a selection for the Magic there. The thing I like about him and his game, and especially for this Magic team, is his shot creation. You know, being able to be one of the best pull-up shooters, and really in the last several years, but especially in this class, being able to get his shot in a lot of different places, playing the pick and roll, make plays as a 6'3", 6'4" guard in that range. And also, you know, defensively, he's not somebody who's necessarily going to be a huge plus, but he's not a liability by any means. And I think you put him in this mix, obviously, with guys like Paolo and Franz, and the rest of the guys kind of emerging. You put him in that mix, and it's something that they haven't necessarily had. Now, I'm not going to say he's going to just contribute right away, but he's somebody I think could eventually be a impact player for this team. Now, I think in all of the draft, and everybody who is trying to figure out who the Magic could pick, there's going to be a lot of options, obviously, in free agency and via trade acquisition, where you might want to address getting wing defense or something in the draft, but you go and get a Malik Monk or, whoever else has been rumored out there, Darius Garland, to kind of fill that role, because the team is obviously a lot closer than, maybe you might have anticipated this fast. But at least in terms of just keeping it draft, Bub Carrington is definitely somebody I think would be a good option.
Now, with the Magic and sort of the conversation that fans are having is, last year, obviously, you draft Anthony Black at 6, you have Jett Howard at 11. Anthony Black saw minutes at times when guys were in and out of the rotation. Jett Howard is a guy that we really didn't get a good look at. He spent most of the season in the G League. Some of the concern is that, are you going to have two rookies again this year when you have the depth that the Magic currently have and stand to have going into this next season? Are there any prospects, in that range that you could see the Magic sort of drafting and stashing again in the G League, sort of letting them develop for, a season or maybe more than that? What type of high swing, high ceiling picks are you looking at in that range?
Yeah, so in terms of a guy like that, I think who fits that pretty perfectly is someone like Keyshawn George out of Miami. He's a big wing who can really shoot it, makes plays well off the dribble, played some point guard in his past before, showing up in the States, and also really improved over the course of the season defensively. Somebody who I think is going to be able to guard a couple positions in the NBA. Somebody who just kind of fits the mold of someone who can contribute in a lot of places in the NBA. Now, he's not a very good athlete. He's not someone who creates a ton of rim pressure, is able to get to the paint as consistently as maybe you would like from a real guard prospect, and somebody who's really legitimately running offense. That's why I think he's more of a wing. But I think he's somebody for a Magic team if you're trying to look for someone who can take a year or two down the line, maybe fits really a lot of what this team has kind of historically liked in guys like Caleb Houston and those bigger wings. And I think that he's somebody who could kind of fit that. I think Johnny Furphy from Kansas is another one, as a guy who is that kind of quintessential off-ball wing who is a really good cutter, transition scorer, can shoot the three. Defensively, there's some questions there. You want to see him get a little bit stronger and just kind of be able to get more confidence with the ball. And not in terms of you're not asking him to make a ton of plays with the ball in his hands, but just being able to attack closeouts a little bit more frequently, make plays off of that. So that's another guy who I think is just a little bit further away, but could pay dividends in the long run.
Yeah. As I mentioned, earlier, the Magic being kind of in the back half of the first round for the first time in a while, uncharted territory for a lot of us Magic fans, at least for the last several seasons. The idea of trading up in the draft. Pretty low. Like, that's a pretty low odds of that happening. But I am definitely curious, with the Magic being on the back half of this first round, are there any guys in the lottery that you think like could be a great fit for the Magic? Any, one or two guys that, again, pretty unlikely that it would happen. But if Jeff Weltman's sitting there, working his magic trade night draft night, trying to work up a trade, what are maybe one or two guys that you think the Magic could target there in the lottery section?
Yeah, so I think there's like a handful of players that really fit well with what the Magic could use, or, just kind of in this sort of system. Obviously Rob Dillingham and Reed Shepherd are guys who have high lottery potential, have been mocked in the top 5. Rob has kind of slipped down a little bit more, so it could be more realistic, but I think it would cost a little bit more than maybe you would want if you're the Orlando Magic. But I think we'll set those guys to the side and we'll talk about Dalton Connect. I think he's someone who has just a little bit wider of a range from about 7 on, and he's somebody who is an older player but one of the best shooters in the class, really turned himself into a big-time scorer this year, transferring from Northern Colorado to Tennessee. Solid size on the wing, 6'5", 6'6", broad shoulders, good vertical athlete, somebody who can get his own shot. I think he just makes a lot of sense with this Magic team. And before his stock kind of trended upwards, he was somebody I really wanted them to be able to get. And also before the Magic made that late run and got a little bit later of a pick than they were projected to. And then I would say Devin Carter out of Providence is the other one. A really tough-minded defensive guard, somebody who improved quite a bit offensively as well, and I buy the shot. So I think that he's one of the more complete players in this draft. He's also a little bit older. I think he'll be able to contribute a little bit faster than some of these other guys. But he's somebody, if you get into that 12, 13, 14, 15 range, he might be somebody you'd be willing to pull the trigger on if it doesn't take more than, the second and a protected first, or, salary, whatever it is. He's another guy I would like.
There's a few things that we know this front office likes: guys from Michigan, guys from Duke, and sons of ex-NBA guys, right? And Devin Carter definitely fits that role. A guy that I wanted to ask you about that I've seen a lot of Magic fans talking about, his brother, funny enough, is going to be a national teammate of Mo and Franz this summer in the Olympics. Tristan da Silva. What are your thoughts on him and potentially his fit with the Magic?
Yeah, he's definitely another one of those guys who I think is well in that range, and I would really like to see in Orlando if that was a possibility. His stock is or his draft range is very much from like 12 to 18 to 20, somewhere in there. But as a 6'8", 6'9", wing / forward, somebody who has turned himself into a knockdown shooter over the years, has really solid feel on both ends of the floor, just kind of make plays, and is that ready-made type of contributor. I think that he makes a lot of sense in terms of size and being able to hold his own defensively and then make plays off of that. I think he makes a lot of sense around playmakers in Paolo and Franz, and gives you a little bit more versatility, and obviously they like that quite a bit. So I would like to see him there for sure. I think my one concern with him is just more of what does he do with the ball from the perimeter, playing a little bit more out there. He's been pretty interior oriented during his time at Colorado, and then also how many positions can he guard? How well is he sliding his feet on the perimeter? I think he's going to be solid on that end, but in terms of you have a guy like Paolo, or just what the lineup looks like, if he's not at the 5, how does he slide in there? So, but other than that, I think he's somebody who a lot of teams are going to be really interested in, because what he brings to the table, and he's going to be able to contribute a little bit faster than some of those other project picks.
Yeah, I know that size and versatility is definitely tempting for a lot of Magic fans. I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. Magic aside, what's a player that's like your sleeper? Like, if you look around at the other drafts, the other mock drafts that you're seeing out there, you're like, why is this guy, fallen so far? Like, is there one guy that you're like, man, I'm really picking this guy to either, maybe get drafted higher than some people are expecting, or maybe just outperform, wherever he's drafted?
Yeah, so I think I would probably say, at least in the first round range, I would probably go with Jalen Tyson out of Cal. I'm a little bit higher on him than his sort of consensus is right now. I just really like his all-around skill set at about 6'6", 6'7", being able to dribble, pass, shoot. Did it all for Cal this year. Obviously, they weren't a great team, but he elevated his game this year from the guy that we've seen him in the past at his previous spots in college. I just think that he has all the tools to be able to contribute and has defended better in previous situations as well. That wasn't always the most consistent thing this year, and I understand why people are a little bit more hesitant for that reason, but I think he just has the skill set to make it happen and should be valued in the top 20 more than he currently is right now. And then I would probably say for another one, just KJ Simpson out of Colorado. I think that he's been often mocked in that like 40s to anywhere past that range. I think I would consider him as early as the late first round. Just another Colorado guy, but big time playmaker. Even though he's a smaller guard, big time playmaker, well-rounded skill set, defends, competes on that end. Really good shooter, plays on and off the ball. Somebody I think has a chance to be a rotation guard in a way that it's not necessarily being fully reflected on a lot of the mainstream mocks.
We talked about how the Magic like guys from Duke. Jared McCain, what are your thoughts on him and his potential maybe to contribute with the Magic right away, given the way that the roster is constructed?
Yeah, he's another guy I really like for Orlando. Somebody who is one of the best shooters in the class. Can make a play for others, really unselfish, competes defensively. I thought he got better on that end quite a bit over the course of the year. It wasn't great to start, especially at the point of attack, but brought in more consistently, was able to hold his own in that way. And I think that he's somebody who is the perfect type of guard that you want around a guy like Paolo, Franz, bigger creators, initiators, somebody who can get off the ball but can also initiate offense, run a pick and roll, make good decisions, low turnovers. That's the type of guy that you want next to those types of players, and I think that he fits that bill. And also, intangible-wise, he's somebody who, by all accounts, works hard, no nonsense in a lot of ways, and just kind of competes at the highest level. So I like him a lot. I think that he's somebody who could potentially shine in his role on a team like the Magic. Now, obviously, he's a little bit smaller, doesn't have the most impressive physical tools or, creation ability in terms of just being able to get to certain things off the bounce. I think he's got a little more, but that's going to have to come over time. But he's somebody that I like for a lot of teams, and especially Orlando.
Just a couple more for you here. An element of uncertainty around the Magic's offseason is what's going to happen with Goga Bitadze. He's a free agent. Wendell Carter was out for a good chunk at the beginning of the year. Goga was able to step in. Are there any centers in this draft that you think like right away could be pretty solid second or third bigs?
Yeah, I think I actually like this center class. I've seen it referred to as weak a couple times, but I think, if that's the option at 18, or even if you find a valuable guy in the second round, there's guys like Zach Edey, who obviously is a little bit polarizing, but in terms of just pure size and production, touch around the rim, he's somebody that I think at worst is going to be able to come in and get you, buckets and, be a presence around the rim. He's going to have to show that he can survive in the pick and roll. That's been my biggest concern with him, because he's gotten guys like Johnny Davis and Jalen Hood-Schifino drafted maybe 10 spots higher than they should have in his college career, just based off of, killing the drop defense that he was playing. But, he's somebody I think could come in and do that. Another guy like Yves Missi might take just a little bit longer, but somebody that is athletic, can finish plays around the rim, block shots, a little bit more versatile in that respect. Deron Holmes is another one. There's more questions about him being able to handle full-time minutes at the 5, so I think for that reason you might go a different direction. But guys like that, Kel'el Ware in that same range. And then second round, you've got Oso Ighodaro, maybe a PJ Hall, who kind of could fill that sort of role potentially.
Now, last question, we're going to get away from the draft a little bit more Magic specific. Just, I know we talked last year, about your opinion of this Magic team. How did that sort of shift over the course of the season, and sort of where are you now just generally with the Magic?
Yeah, I really like this team. I've been a fan of the front court. Obviously, Wendell didn't have the most impressive season, and there's a little bit more questions about that than I had previously felt like, at least going back like 2 seasons ago. But, Paolo and Franz, those are guys that are going to be, blue chips, and being able to build around them and create a team that looks a lot different and causes matchup issues for a lot of other teams in the league, especially in the Eastern Conference, at least with the way it's currently constructed. And then, you've got a guy like Jalen Suggs, who I really like, one of my favorite players to watch in the league. Just being able to bring tenacity, excellent defense, and he's grown a lot as an offensive player over the last couple of years, being able to shoot more effectively and just make plays. And I really like those three, and then just being able to build around those guys. We touched on the creation part of it, but getting another person, getting more shooting around them, I think you got the chance to really compete for conference finals at the minimum over the next couple of years, especially with the contract situations of these teams. So I like the Magic. I think the future is super bright. It's just about hitting on the margins and figuring it out to have the most success in the short term.
Well, we always appreciate your insight, and then you hyping up our team is, definitely an added bonus. Keandre, man, you're legitimately the best at what you do, man. We can't, tell you enough how much we appreciate you coming on and joining the show each year, which is literally the busiest time of your life, I'm sure. But can you just let our viewers and listeners know where they can find your work and find you on social media?
Yeah, so I'm on YouTube at Hoop Intellect. Got lots of stuff coming very, very soon in terms of scouting reports, a little bit more in the Orlando Magic range coming up as well. Big board just dropped, as you said earlier in the show. And then you can find me on Twitter at Hoop Intellect, Instagram. A lot of different stuff coming on all of those platforms as well. So, yeah.
Last thing that I want to say, I know we have obviously a lot of Magic fans that watch this show, but I know there's a small contingent of Magic fans that are draft prospect college basketball junkies. Keandre doesn't only release content like this time of year around the draft. It is literally year round with this guy. He is always watching, always breaking down, always evaluating. So even if you're like, I can't get enough college basketball or draft talk, prospect talk, all year round, you can go to Keandre's YouTube channel. He's always got content coming. So again, Keandre, absolutely the best at what you do, man. We appreciate the time as always.
I appreciate it, man, for sure. Anytime.
All right, Kev, as we're talking now, we basically have 2 weeks from the recording of this episode to the NBA draft. I still have my questions and doubts of what the Magic are going to do with this pick. Are they going to keep this pick? I was encouraged by Keandre just talking about how, like, in every draft, there are going to be those, if you can find those gems, they're in every single one of these drafts. And if the Magic can find that, and he talked towards the end of the episode, like, where you have to operate around the margins, like, this is one of those times where if the Magic can find a legitimate NBA rotation caliber player in this draft, it's going to help continue to set them up for success for years. So I'm looking forward to this draft. Was there anything that Keandre mentioned that really stood out to you in our conversation?
Yeah, I mean, similarly, I was very intrigued to hear what he thought about the draft as a whole. Like I mentioned, there's everybody and their mom right now is talking about, this draft is terrible, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, is it really though? I mean, maybe there's not the gold star at the top of the tree, like that some drafts have, but I still feel like there's a lot of talent there across the rest of the draft. And so to hear him talk about, I think there's some good guys there. It makes me feel good. What I just wanted to say was, like, if you want to sound smart around your friends, like, go watch Keandre stuff. I'm serious. Like, watch his big boards, watch, his mock drafts, but also, like, if there are certain players that you're interested in, he probably has a full breakdown of their game. Like, he does all these, like, actual individual profiles on certain players, and they're all really good. So, like, if you want to sound smart around your friends, the last couple weeks here leading up to the draft, just, take in all that Keandre content that you can between now and then, and you're going to sound a lot smarter around your friends. And so you can thank Keandre for that. Thank us for sending you to him. But yeah, shout out to Keandre. Thanks a lot for him, joining the show again.
I think the biggest compliment that I could pay Keandre is for somebody who like his credibility relies on like his opinions and like whether or not those types of things pan out. He never comes across with any type of bias when he's talking about these guys. You can tell that he really just loves basketball. He loves the evaluation process and tracking prospects. Just so much fun. Like, I think this is now the 3rd year in a row we've had him on the show.
Yeah.
Usually it's a little bit different because we're at the very top of the draft and we're talking about, oh, can we trade up and get this guy? Is this guy going to fall to us? Who are we going to take at the very tippy top there? But no, this was really fun, like going through this process with him. And there's quite a few guys that, that he's talked about that I'm interested in. I feel like there's so many ways that the Magic can go, and not only the draft, but free agency as well. And like, are they going to keep the pick? If they do keep the pick, is it going to be another Jet Howard that gets, sort of stashed in the G League? Or are they going to try to find somebody who can contribute in a real way, sort of right away? Just about 2 weeks and we won't really have to, ask too many of these questions here. But as news continues to come out around guys that the Magic are working out, and we may be able to bring on, another guest to talk a little bit more about the draft as we get a little bit closer. But again, Keandre, in my opinion, the very best at what he does, especially in the YouTube space. So if you haven't checked him out already, go ahead, subscribe, follow him on social media. Just really, really appreciative of him always taking the time.
Yep. And Jonathan, before we wrap this one up, we can't leave without acknowledging the passing of Jerry West, the logo, an absolute legend, not just as a player, and then ultimately, working in front office. The dude committed like 60 something years to the NBA, which is just insane. I mean, the guy lived what a lot of people would consider to be a dream life. You play high level basketball in college, you play the highest level of basketball in the NBA. I think he was 14-time All-Star. Yeah, 14-time All-Star. Has one of the most, the craziest shots ever. But if you haven't watched this, go back and watch Jerry West's. It wasn't a game winner. I think it was a game tying shot from beyond half court in one of the 70s finals against the Celtics. It was like a 60-footer to tie a game in the NBA finals and send it to overtime. It's one of the most iconic shots in NBA history. If you haven't seen that yet, if you're maybe a younger NBA fan, go watch it on YouTube right now. It's crazy. But again, longtime player in the NBA, longtime, member of the front office. By all accounts, great guy. And again, the NBA logo is freaking Jerry West. So anyway, obviously that's a big news line that hit the NBA today, the passing of Jerry West.
And the thing about the logo, that's his nickname, Jerry West, the logo. But I don't think the NBA has ever come out and confirmed. And I know there's, reasons behind that, but it would be nice for them to just come out and finally be like, right. Jerry West, was the logo. But yeah, 60 plus years, committed to, playing and working in the NBA. And obviously not that long ago, we had the passing of Bill Walton, and immediately Jerry West and Bill Russell, obviously, their names are always going to be, connected to one another for, their many matchups in the finals. But I was like, man, not that recently we've had now Jerry West, Bill Walton, and Bill Russell. Bill Russell's passing was almost 2 years ago already. Yeah. I didn't realize that. For some reason, I felt like that was last summer. But it's just crazy to lose 3 pillars of NBA history over the course of the last couple of years. Really, really sad. And I don't know about you, but I didn't hear that, he was unhealthy at all. I don't know many details around his passing, and that's really not important for us to know that. But, it was 86 years old, led a good life. But yeah, I wasn't expecting that news, obviously, at all. And obviously our thoughts and our prayers are with his family and the entire NBA community. But hopefully we don't lose another legend for a long time. Really sad.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see all the tributes that roll out next season for those two guys. Like you said, two of the biggest, not just, as far as their playing career, those two are legends, but personalities, those are two of the biggest, Bill Walton and Jerry West, two of the biggest personalities the NBA has ever seen. And so, yeah, very beloved across the league, across basketball. And so, yeah, be interesting to see the tributes that happen, all the way 4 months from now, as we mentioned, once the NBA season tips off.
And last thing to mention, just before we wrap up here, Anthony Parker appeared on this week's episode of the Orlando Magic Pod Squad with Dante Marcatelli and the whole team there. not a ton came from that we didn't already know, but talked a little bit about Jet Howard and sort of mentioning that he has been made aware of really the things that he needs to work on. He was quoted saying, to his credit, he took on the challenge and you saw him get better over the course of the season. You saw how he played, starting to line up with what we wanted to see from him. And then talking about both Jet Howard and Anthony Black have been in the facility already, to start the summer, and that you can see the work that they've been putting in on their body and seeing that confidence start to grow. So obviously, when it comes to the draft and what the Magic are going to do, you have to think about Anthony Black and Jet Howard and sort of where their standing is on this team and on this roster at this point. And we'll probably have some answers on that in, like we said, the next couple of weeks. And I'm excited to just, again, have answers and not have to speculate. When it comes to the draft and free agency, it feels like we've been speculating since really January when it came to the trade deadline and whether or not the Magic were going to make a move. So that's my favorite time of year, is when we can just stop talking about the what ifs and start talking about the whys and the hows of sort of what happened.
Yeah, it's fun to think about. Like, there are really only two down sections of an offseason for a team like the Magic, right? You got right now, but then once the draft comes in 2 weeks, like we already talked about the schedule. You got the draft, you got, signing your own before that, signing your own free agents, the draft, then you have, the free agents and then the trades and all that kind of stuff. And then this summer we got Olympics right after that, and all the way until basically end of August. Then you got a few weeks there, end of August, into September, where there's a little bit of a downtime, but then you're into media day and training camp and preseason, all that kind of stuff. So it is a little under 4 months till basketball, but really, hopefully it flies by with all the other stuff that's going on. So I'm excited.
Yeah. So October 7th, that is going to be the first preseason game. So media day is probably going to be like September 30th, like somewhere around there, like roughly like a week before the preseason games start typically. So, and then one thing that I failed to mention is July 12th through the 22nd is going to be Vegas Summer League. So I don't know if we're going to, I would guess we would see Anthony Black, but I know for sure, I think Jet Howard's talked about being there. So it'll be really nice to see what those guys have been up to and how their games are improving. So again, just a couple of weeks, and then, we're going to have quite a bit to look forward to and talk about throughout the summer. And then, yes, there's going to be like that end of August, early part of September, where it's just like radio silence, where we hear absolutely nothing, and
we'll be itching because we're just ready for it.
That'll be a pretty guest heavy period on the Sixth Man Show. But Kevin, unless you got something else, I think that's going to wrap this one up. So we will go ahead and do just that. That's going to do it for this one. Again, a big thank you to Keandre from Hoop Intellect for joining the show today. For producer Kevin Tucker, for Jonathan Osborne, you all have been listening to the Sixth Man Show, and we will catch you guys next time. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Sixth Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sixth Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!